Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we are going through 1 Chronicles chapter 1 and 2. Tomorrow we're going to do more Psalms, lots and lots of Psalms. It's going to be Psalm 43, 44, 45, 49, 84, 85, and 87. So we'll get ready for them. Now, let's jump in to Chronicles. Now, the first book of Chronicles, there's no author really named here, but the Jewish tradition suggests that Ezra was possibly the author. Now, this happened around 450 BC. 1st and 2nd Chronicles originally, just like 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings, used to be just one book. Later on, it was divided into two books in the 2nd century BC. Now, the big picture for the Chronicles, the 1st Chronicles to be specific, is that David ruled for 40 years under the blessing of God, lavishing his attention on Jerusalem, the priesthood, and preparation for building the temple. Now, to summarize this, there is a lengthy section of genealogical material. It's actually the most extensive found in Scripture. And that's what we're focusing on today, is Chronicles 1 and 2, which is that genealogy. An important function of this genealogy, which traced the history of Israel from its ancestral roots in Adam to the period of restoration after the Babylonian exile, was to show continuity in God's plan for Israel. King David's rule was glorious, and a pinnacle of his reign was his bringing the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. God honored David's desire to build a temple by granting him an eternal throne. While David was not allowed to build God's temple, he did make preparations for its construction. Now, for the writer of Chronicles, this was David's most important contribution and governed his account of David's reign. Now, a little bit of food for thought here before we get started. Times were very difficult and disappointing for those who returned from the Babylonian exile. Many wondered if they still fit into God's plan and if his promises were still applicable to them. The author of 1 Chronicles addresses such concerns by showing that even though a Davidic king was not on a temporal throne, they still were God's people and could still wait and hope for total restoration. And while waiting, they could still do the things that God required, such as offering the right sacrifices and the right priests at the right place. Such lessons would keep them from making the same mistakes that those that came before them. And those that came before them made those same mistakes over and over and over, didn't they? A takeaway from this is that during his reign, David emphasized worshiping the Lord rightly through song and sacrifice. And that's why we're bouncing back and forth between the Psalms and the stories of David. Now, this brings me to a principle that we can live by. As we live our lives, we should have as a primary goal to build God's eternal kingdom, not our own. This was one of the examples that David's story set. Now, chapter 1 of 1 Chronicles, right off the bat, something stuck out to me. It says from Adam to Abraham, and it goes Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah. Something's missing already, isn't it? What about Cain and Abel? Cain and Abel's not in there, are they? Very interesting, but they were left out. That there was a purpose, though. Seth represented the ongoing hope after the failure. After the failure. And I'm guessing that was Cain and Abel. That's what they're referring to. Now I find it interesting in verse 10 here. Cush fathered Nimrod, who was the first to become a great warrior on earth. Now, at what point in history did the word Nimrod go from being a great warrior to being somebody that's just dumber than a box of rocks? Maybe you have some information on that. I don't. I have no idea. So the chapter concludes with a list of Edom's chiefs. The book of First Chronicles has now covered several minor lines in contrast to its major purpose of leading up to the kings of Judah. And in chapter 2, verse 1, now we're ready for the main line of interest here, the descendants of Jacob. And these were Israel's sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Those are the 12 tribes. And then they get on to list Judah's descendants through the end of chapter 2. And that's it for today. That's all you get out of me. Let's see you tomorrow for some Psalms. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, click the like button and the subscribe button. And, of course, click the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow. We'll see you then for another episode of the Bible in 1 year with the Preacher's Husband. See ya.